The morning they departed, the sea was like iron, gray, unyielding, and cold enough to bite the bones. A low mist clung to the harbor at Lorient, coiling between cranes and half-broken piers like a living thing. From the warehouses came the dull echo of boots and the clatter of chains, a hollow rhythm that spoke of war and exhaustion. France had been under German occupation for years, but now even the occupying soldiers moved with the hollow-eyed weariness of men who knew defeat was only a matter of time. Through that ghostly fog, WW547 prepared to leave. Her hull, 76 meters of dark steel, glistened with a thin film of condensation. The engineers called her a Type IXC U-boat, built for endurance and range, capable of striking far beyond the Atlantic. On paper, she was a predator. In reality, she was already obsolete. The Allies had learned how to kill submarines. The Atlantic had turned from hunting ground to graveyard. Yet the orders came, and men obeyed. Kapitän-Leutnant Ernst Bauer stood on the bridge, watching the harbor fade behind him. His uniform was pressed, his cap immaculate, but his eyes carried years of sleepless nights. He was 34, though he looked older. Lines cut deep around his mouth, and a faint scar traced along his jaw, remnants of a British depth charge that had almost killed him 2 patrols ago. He had commanded 2 submarines before this one, both destroyed. Both times he alone had survived. To the men, he was der Schattenfischer, the shadow fisher, a man who could slip through the enemy's nets, who could vanish into the deep and return when no one else could. But sailors are superstitious creatures, and survival has its own curse. Some whispered that Bauer had made a pact with the sea, that death followed him but never claimed him. On the docks, the officers gave final farewells, perfunctory handshakes, salutes without conviction. They all knew what this mission meant. Germany was dying, its cities in ruins, its navy scattered. The U-boat fleet that once terrorized the Atlantic was now a hunted relic. Yet Bauer and his crew of 50 were ordered to sea. His second-in-command, Oberleutnant José Karl Müller, a blond-haired, sharp-tongued officer barely past his 20s, approached him on the bridge. "Third patrol, Herr Kapitän," he said, attempting a grin. "Perhaps the sea will favor us once more." Bauer's eyes didn't leave the horizon. "The sea favors no one," he said quietly. "It only lends mercy, to take it back later." Müller fell silent. The diesel engines rumbled to life, a deep growl that vibrated through the steel underfoot. The dock hands released the mooring ropes, and the submarine drifted slowly away from the pier. The fog swallowed her whole within moments. Below deck, the submarine throbbed with mechanical life. The narrow corridors were already thick with oil, sweat, and the metallic tang of machinery. Every inch of space was occupied. Pipes, bunks, valves, gauges. A U-boat was less a vessel and more a coffin built to move. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Otto Reinhardt crouched beside the massive diesels, his face slick with grease. He was a mountain of a man, with forearms like pistons and a voice that carried over the roar of machinery. "Keep her breathing, boys," he shouted. "She's old, but she's got fight left." Reinhardt had served on submarines since the early days of the war. He loved the engines more than most men loved their wives. He claimed he could tell the health of a boat just by listening to her hum. To him, WW547 was alive, a creature of steel and fire that only needed care and attention. Near the stern, in the bunks, Matthias Kruger sat hunched over a scrap of paper, writing by the dim light of a lantern. He was 19, the youngest on board, his cheeks still soft, his eyes full of a quiet fear he tried to hide. His letter to his mother was full of lies, lies meant to comfort. The sea is calm, the men are kind, and the war feels far away out here. He didn't tell her about the smell of sweat that never left the air, or the constant, gnawing sense that the ocean was waiting just outside, patient and cold. By nightfall, the French coast had vanished behind them. The submarine rolled through the Atlantic swells, cutting through the black water with ghostly grace. Above, the stars shimmered through the mist, thousands of them, and Bauer stood alone on the bridge, the wind clawing at his coat. He looked at the stars, the same constellations he had seen on every voyage, and felt no comfort. Somewhere beyond those stars, cities burned. His home in Bremen, his family, gone. He didn't know if anyone he loved was still alive. All he had now were the men below him, the hum of his engines and the endless, indifferent sea. At midnight, he gathered his officers around the plotting table. The dim red light cast their faces in eerie shadow. Bauer spread a worn map across the table. "New orders," he said. His voice was calm, steady, as if reading from a script. "We are to intercept Allied convoy ONS 112, heading north from Freetown, Sierra Leone. We will operate south of the Azores, near the equatorial line." Reinhardt frowned. "That's far, sir. Beyond our normal patrol range." Bauer nodded. "Command wants disruption of supply routes to Africa. They say it will slow the enemy advance." His lips twitched slightly. "Perhaps someone still believes we can turn the tide." Muller stared at the coordinates. "Sierra Leone, that's half the world away. Fuel will be tight, Herr Kapitän. We might not have enough to return." Bauer looked up slowly, his face unreadable. "Then we will make the sea our home." No one spoke after that. The sound of the engines filled the silence, rhythmic and heavy. Orders were orders. In wartime, questions were a luxury. That night, as the submarine plunged deeper into the Atlantic, the men settled into routine. Watches were rotated, meals served, and laughter, dry, hollow laughter, occasionally echoed through the narrow compartments. Even in despair, sailors find ways to joke. It's the only weapon they have against fear. By the third day, they had crossed into open ocean. The radio room received fragments of transmissions from other U-boats, distress calls, unfinished messages, cries for help cut short by static. Bauer listened in silence, his jaw clenched. He never commented, never prayed. In the torpedo room, Kruger helped load one of the last Mark 14 torpedoes. The steel cylinder gleamed dully under the lantern light. "Do you think we'll ever use these?" he asked. The older sailor beside him, Wagner, a man with gray in his beard and scars on his hands, gave a humorless laugh. "Kid, I've fired more torpedoes than I've fired prayers. Both miss their mark just as often." The men chuckled, but when the laughter faded, a heaviness lingered. They all knew the truth. The war was ending. Soon there would be nothing left to fight for except survival. Still, the sea called them forward. The Atlantic rolled and whispered, its waves dark as iron and just as merciless. The engines pulsed steadily, the heart of a dying beast that refused to stop beating. Bauer remained on the bridge until dawn, watching as the first weak light touched the horizon. He inhaled deeply, the cold air burning his lungs. Somewhere inside, he felt that familiar ache, the premonition that this voyage would not end like the others. There would be no rescue, no return, no final port. He touched the metal railing of the bridge, fingers tracing the frost forming on the steel. "If the sea wants us," he murmured, "she'll take us whole." Below him, his crew slept in narrow bunks, unaware that fate had already turned its gaze upon them. The sun rose, pale and weak. U-547 continued south, vanishing into the endless gray, her wake dissolving into silence. The first week passed like a whisper. Life aboard U-547 settled into its mechanical rhythm. Meals of canned bread and sausages, 4-hour shifts, stale air that smelled of sweat, diesel, and metal. Every man aboard moved through the submarine like clockwork, trained to function in spaces so tight they could feel one another's breath. There were no days or nights down here, only the soft red glow of the instrument panels and the rhythmic hum of the engines. To the men, the submarine was a world unto itself, a narrow, sweating corridor of steel and sound. When they surfaced at night to recharge the batteries, the deck would open to the vast emptiness of the Atlantic. Some of the crew climbed up for a few minutes of real air, letting the cold winds sting their faces before descending again into the stifling dark. They said the stars out there felt cruel, beautiful but distant, as if the heavens were watching them die. Kapitän Lieutenant Bauer kept mostly to the control room, his eyes rarely leaving the gauges and maps. He slept only when his body gave up, usually sitting upright in his chair. His second-in-command, Karl Müller, began to notice how little he spoke anymore. Orders came short and flat, no jokes, no fear, just precision. "Does he ever rest?" Kruger asked one night, watching Bauer from the galley. Müller exhaled smoke through his nose, shaking his head. "He's a man who has died already, Kruger. The sea just hasn't buried him yet." It was meant as a joke, but no one laughed. By the 9th day, they were far beyond the shipping lanes. The radio brought only static, the coded channels silent. The world above might as well not exist. The deeper they went into the South Atlantic, the heavier the air became, hot and humid even inside the steel hull. The engines began to labor in the heat. That was when the first strange reading appeared. "Compass deviation, 3 degrees port," reported Navigator Weber, tapping the dial. "Correcting, still off course." Reinhardt, the chief engineer, frowned from the other end of the control room. "Try again." Weber adjusted the compass once more, but the needle spun lazily in a slow circle, ignoring magnetic north entirely. Reinhardt checked the secondary compass. Same result. "Faulty instruments?" Müller asked. Reinhardt shook his head. "Both failing at once? No, something's interfering." Bauer didn't look up from his chart. "Continue south by estimate. If the compass lies, the stars won't." That night, when the submarine surfaced, the stars were nowhere to be seen. A thick fog blanketed the ocean, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The horizon had vanished. Bauer ordered the engines cut to low speed. "Sound watch," he commanded. The hydrophone operator, a wiry man named Schaefer, pressed his headphones against his ears and listened to the deep. At first, nothing. Then, faint, rhythmic tapping. Tap, 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 tap. "Contact?" Bauer asked. Schaefer hesitated. "Not a ship, Herr Kapitän. It's slower, mechanical, but far off, like something knocking on the hull of the sea." Bauer's jaw tightened. "Echo?" "No, sir. It's answering our pings." The control room went silent. Even the air felt heavier. Bauer leaned over the sonar display. Nothing but ghost signals, flickering like static. He gave the order, "Maintain course. Ignore it." But the men whispered. "Superstition spreads fast in a submarine. They said the ocean was alive down here, that something old moved beneath them, answering their sonar like a voice in a dark cave." Reinhardt tried to calm them, laughing it off as underwater currents or rocks, but even he began sleeping with one eye open. On the 11th day, the storm came. It rose from the horizon without warning, black clouds and monstrous waves that devoured the light. The surface heaved like a living beast. Bauer ordered a crash dive, but the submarine didn't respond fast enough. The hull slammed against the waves, tossing men to the floor. "Flood the tanks!" Reinhardt roared. The sub dove, groaning as water rushed in. At 40 meters, it leveled for a moment, then began to sink too fast. The depth gauge spun, 80 meters, 100, 120. "Blow main ballast!" Bauer shouted. Reinhardt hit the release valve. Compressed air hissed through the steel veins of the ship. The descent slowed, then stopped at 140 meters. "Hold depth!" Bauer barked. The engines steadied, but the pressure was enormous. Metal creaked, rivets groaned, and water trickled from a cracked seam in the torpedo room. Men worked with frantic precision to seal it, hands shaking. Then came a sound. A single heavy thud against the hull. It echoed through the submarine like the heartbeat of a monster. Then another, and another. 3 strikes. Slow, deliberate. Every man froze. Bauer's eyes darted to the sonar operator. "Report." Schaefer's hands trembled as he turned the dials. "No contacts, Herr Kapitän. Nothing at all." "Could it be a whale?" Muller offered weakly. Reinhardt looked up from his station. "Whales don't knock 3 times." No one laughed this time. For the next hour, they held their breath. The hull stayed silent, but no one dared speak above a whisper. Only the steady hiss of oxygen and the dull hum of the engines filled the air. When Bauer finally gave the order to surface again, the storm had passed, but the fog remained. The water was unnaturally calm, as if the ocean had gone to sleep. On the 15th day, another anomaly appeared. The sonar began to pick up faint, pulsing echoes, not from ahead, but from below. Bauer stared at the readings. The depth under the keel was over 3,000 meters, no seafloor for miles. "Could it be a malfunction?" he asked quietly. Schaefer shook his head. "No, sir. The signal's moving." "Moving?" "Yes, sir. Rising." Before Bauer could respond, the signal vanished. The sonar went dead, the display blank. Reinhardt tapped the console. "Power's fine, instruments are fine. Whatever it was, it stopped listening." That night, Kruger wrote another letter in his bunk. "Something's wrong, Mama. The ocean feels different here. It's not just water. It watches us. It knows." He folded the paper, but there was nowhere to send it. By the 16th day, Command finally sent a transmission, fragmented, half lost in static. "Report position immediately. Danger." Then silence. Bauer tried to reply, but the radio refused to transmit. The circuits worked, the antenna was intact, yet the signals went nowhere. It was as if the ocean had swallowed the airwaves whole. When Reinhardt suggested turning back, Bauer only shook his head. "If we turn now, we admit defeat. Orders are orders." "But what if Command's already gone?" Muller asked. Bauer looked at him, his eyes distant, unreadable. "Then we follow the sea." That night, as they dove once more, the men gathered quietly in the galley, whispering over ration tins. Someone claimed to have seen lights outside the porthole, small bluish glows drifting alongside the hull. Reinhardt dismissed it as bioluminescent plankton, but Schaefer, who had been on sonar watch, swore otherwise. "They're not drifting," he said. "They're following." The men fell silent. Above them, the Atlantic stretched endlessly, its waves whispering secrets only the dead could understand. Below, the darkness deepened, vast and alive. And somewhere between those two infinities, U-547 kept moving. 50 souls locked inside a steel coffin, following orders from a dying empire, unaware that something ancient was now following them. The ocean had gone silent, but the silence was not empty. Morning, or what passed for it beneath the waves, came with a low vibration through the hull. Not the usual rhythm of engines or turbines, but something else. A tremor that resonated through the steel, faint yet rhythmic, as though the ocean itself were breathing. He turned the lens eastward and froze. There, at the edge of vision, floated a black object, too large for wreckage, too small for a ship. It rose and sank slightly with the swells, as though anchored by nothing but its own gravity. "Bearing 085, Bauer said softly. "Course to intercept." Reinhardt, who had been monitoring the ballast systems, looked up sharply. "Sir, we're low on diesel reserves. If that's another derelict, it's not worth—" "Silence, Chief," Bauer cut him off. "We investigate." No one argued. Orders were orders, and even descent felt dangerous now. The submarine surfaced slowly, its conning tower breaking the still water with a hiss. The object loomed closer, metallic, smooth, unlike anything they'd ever seen. No rust, no rivets, no markings. Just a curved hull that glinted faintly under the gray light. Kruger stood at the deck hatch, squinting through binoculars. "It's not German," he muttered. "Not British either. Looks like no ship I've ever seen." "Launch the dinghy," Bauer ordered. "I'll go myself." Reinhardt stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, if that's a mine or some new Allied trap—" I said, "I'll go." Within minutes, the Kapitänleutnant and 2 crewmen were rowing through the still water, their oars making soft splashes in the silence. The metallic object loomed ahead, half submerged. As they drew near, it became clear that it wasn't a ship at all. It was a section of metal plating, enormous, curved inward like part of a sphere. The edges were smooth, not torn or cut, as if the material had been melted into shape by some unimaginable heat. Bauer reached out with a gloved hand and tapped it. The sound that came back wasn't hollow. It was deep, resonant, almost musical, like striking a bell buried in the ocean. Then the compass needle on his wristwatch spun wildly. "Back to the boat," he said, his voice low and sharp. "Now." The men rowed hard. As they turned away, one of them, a young sailor named Lehman, looked down over the edge of the dinghy. "Sir, light below us!" The water beneath them glowed faintly, pulsing like veins of fire beneath the surface. Blue-white light spreading in patterns, circular and perfect. Then, as suddenly as it began, the glow vanished. They made it back aboard, soaked and shaking. Bauer said nothing as the hatch sealed shut and the submarine dove again. But his eyes told the story, the look of a man who'd seen something that didn't belong in his world. For the next 2 days, Bauer became more withdrawn. He spent hours staring at maps, running calculations, muttering coordinates that no one else recognized. The men began to whisper that their captain was losing his mind. On the 20th day, the sonar came alive again. "Contact," Schaefer whispered. "Bearing 172, depth unknown." Bauer was at his side in seconds. "Surface ship?" "No, sir. Below us. Depth reading? Impossible." "Report." Schaefer swallowed hard. 4,000 meters and rising. The words sent a shiver through the control room. Nothing alive could move that fast. Nothing built by man could survive that depth. "Evasive course," Bauer ordered. "Down angle 10 degrees. Silent running." The submarine descended, engines throttled to minimum. Every man aboard could hear the hull groaning, metal bending under the weight of the sea. Then the sound began again, that slow, deliberate thud, 3 times. Bang, bang, bang. It came from the aft section this time, near the torpedo storage. Reinhardt and Meller ran the corridor with flashlights, but found nothing. No leaks, no damage, no source. The sound had come from the outside. "Could be thermal expansion," Reinhardt said half-heartedly, but he didn't believe it. At 180 meters, Bauer gave the order to level out. Maintain depth. Lights off. Full silence. For 4 hours, they drifted. Nothing but the hiss of recycled air and the beating of hearts. Then came the whisper. It wasn't a sound so much as a vibration, a modulation that came through the steel itself, like a voice speaking from within the walls. Schaefer's headphones crackled with it. He tore them off, pale as chalk. "Someone's transmitting," he gasped, "but not on any known frequency." "What language?" Bauer asked. "I don't know, sir. It's not language. It's patterns, harmonics." Bauer leaned closer to the radio, listening. The sound was faint, melodic, hypnotic, like a choir singing underwater. But beneath the harmony lay a rhythm, almost like Morse code. "Record it," he ordered. They recorded for 2 minutes before the signal cut out. Then the lights flickered. The engine stalled. Total blackout. Reinhardt sprinted to the engineering bay, shouting for men to check the batteries. Everything was functional, no short, no damage, and yet the submarine had gone completely dead. Then, one by one, the lights came back. Dim at first, then bright. But the readings were wrong. The pressure gauge showed 0. The depth indicator flickered with nonsense symbols. Schaefer checked the sonar again. "Sir, we're not getting any echo." "What do you mean?" "I mean, there's nothing out there. No seafloor, no surface, just nothing." Bauer stared at him, then at the gauges, then at the dark water outside the porthole. For the first time, fear crept into his eyes. "Run a test ping." The sonar pulsed. The signal went out. No return, no delay, just silence. They were alone, not just in the ocean, but somewhere beyond it. By the 22nd day, food had begun to spoil. Metal tools rusted overnight. Watches stopped ticking. Even speech felt strange, as if sound moved slower in the air. The men started seeing things. Glows drifting outside the portholes. Shadows moving where no light reached. Reinhardt caught one of the mechanics staring at the ceiling, whispering a prayer to something that wasn't God. That night, Bauer finally gathered the senior crew in the control room. "We're turning back," he said, his voice low but steady. "North by northeast. Surface in 12 hours." No one objected. The order came like a relief. Then, without warning, the entire submarine lurched. Men fell from their stations. The hull groaned like it was being twisted by invisible hands. "Depth charge?" Merle shouted. "No explosion," Reinhardt yelled back. "Something's pulling us." The deck tilted forward sharply. 5 degrees, 10, 15. Everything unsecured went flying. The bow pointed downward again, diving fast. "Reverse engines!" Bauer roared. But it was useless. The submarine was being dragged into the abyss. The last thing anyone saw through the periscope was the sea itself boiling, light beneath the surface, blinding and cold, spiraling like a vortex of liquid glass. Then the ocean closed above them, silent and eternal. The men screamed, prayed, clawed at controls that no longer answered. The hull screamed with them, metal stretching to its limit. And then, suddenly, nothing. No sound, no motion, no pain. Only silence. U-547 and her 50 souls vanished from every record, every frequency, every chart. In the weeks that followed, the Kriegsmarine sent out a search order. No wreckage, no signals, not even an oil slick. It was as if the submarine had been erased from the ocean itself. But sometimes, sailors whispered, when the Atlantic is stilled and the fog comes down, you can hear 3 faint knocks echoing through the water. Bang, bang, bang. And in the static of old naval radios, if you listen long enough, a voice still sings from the deep, soft, melodic, and not quite human. In the spring of 1944, the Atlantic quieted. Convoy lanes grew emptier as the Allies pushed closer to victory, and the U-boats, once the hunters, had become prey. Depth charges, radar sweeps, and aircraft patrols made every dive a dance with death. But for the Kriegsmarine's central command in Kiel, one disappearance weighed more heavily than the rest. The first reports came from the U-boat Flotilla 33, stationed at Lorient. A patrol craft had intercepted fragments of transmission, garbled and almost spectral. The Morse bursts made no sense. Broken strings of numbers, reversed code groups, impossible coordinates that placed the submarine somewhere deep within the mid-Atlantic ridge where no U-boat should have gone. Oberkommando der Marine sent word to Berlin, U-547 presumed lost. Cause unknown. But not everyone accepted that. Dr. Hans Eckhart, a naval physicist assigned to the U-boat acoustic division, was called to review the final transmissions. He was a tall man, quiet, eyes perpetually shadowed from sleepless nights over sonar schematics. When he first heard the recording from Bauer's final log, the one recovered from shortwave static, he froze. "What is that?" the adjutant asked him. Eckhart replayed the tape. Beneath the white noise, faint and rising, was a sound, melodic, layered, inhuman. Not a signal, but something that sang. "It's not machinery," he murmured, "and it's not human voice." The admiral in charge, Konteradmiral Voss, slammed his fist on the table. "Superstition, Eckhart! You think a ghost swallowed my submarine?" "No, sir," Eckhart replied, his tone flat. "But the sea has harmonics. Sometimes it sings back." Voss scowled. "You have 2 days. Find me a rational explanation. Then seal this file. Understood?" Eckhart nodded, but he didn't obey. He took the tape to his lab, a small concrete room beneath the Kiel dockyards. Using an oscilloscope, he slowed the waveform, analyzing the pattern. It wasn't random. The frequencies formed precise intervals, mathematical sequences resembling prime numbers. It was a message. He translated what he could, repeating trios, intervals of 3. Bang, bang, bang. The same rhythm that haunted the last sonar logs of U-547. Meanwhile, the Kriegsmarine dispatched a search squadron, 2 destroyers and a reconnaissance plane, to the coordinates estimated from the final signal. For a week, they combed the Atlantic, dropping marker buoys, scanning sonar. Nothing. No debris, no oil slick, not even a hint of steel on the seabed. But then, on the 8th day, U-259, one of the escort submarines, reported a strange contact. A metallic mass detected at 3,200 meters, too deep for recovery, but undeniably there. The captain of U-259 logged, "Contact stationary. Hull resonance unusual. Emits periodic acoustic pulses, 30-second intervals. Not natural." The message reached Kiel. Within hours, it vanished from the archives. Voss ordered all further records sealed under Geheime Kommandosache, top secret. Officially, U-547 was declared lost due to pressure failure. No mention of the signals, no mention of the strange harmonics or the glowing water. The families received identical letters, formal, efficient, lifeless. "Your son served honorably. His vessel was lost in action. May God protect his soul." but rumors traveled faster than sensors. Among the crews of the surviving U-boats, whispers spread of the ghost submarine. Some claimed to have heard its distress calls echoing faintly through sonar, 3 knocks repeating in the deep. Others said they'd seen its outline beneath the waves, moving silently alongside their own. Eckhart couldn't let it rest. He began collecting classified U-boat logs from other lost vessels, U-366, U-479, U-745. Each one, before disappearing, had reported similar interference on sonar, strange rhythmic echoes that matched the sequence from Bauer's final recording. It wasn't one incident, it was a pattern. By July, Eckhart's findings reached a single terrifying hypothesis. There was something alive in the Atlantic, something deep beneath the ridges where heat vents boiled and the sun had never touched. It wasn't an enemy weapon or an Allied experiment. It was older, possibly as old as the ocean itself. He compiled his research into a dossier labeled Project Nibelung. The name was fitting, a myth of men who sought treasure beneath the waters and were swallowed by their own greed. When he brought it to Voss, the admiral read only the first page before tearing it in half. "Do you know what this would do to morale?" he roared. "To admit that we lost a submarine to fairy tales? You will burn these notes, Doctor." Eckhart met his gaze calmly. "If you bury this truth, it will surface again. The sea doesn't keep secrets, it only delays them." 2 days later, Eckhart disappeared. His laboratory was sealed. The guards who'd last seen him claimed he had walked into the fog at dawn, carrying only a briefcase and the old tape recorder. He was never seen again. When the war ended, Allied intelligence seized the Kriegsmarine archives. Among the confiscated materials was a single, water-damaged folder labeled U-547. Inside, 1 page of coordinates, a brief note scrawled in pencil, "If you listen, it will answer," and a reel of magnetic tape marked "Do Not Play." In 1951, a British research vessel named HMS Calder conducted sonar mapping near the same coordinates. They detected an anomaly, a perfect hemispherical cavity in the ocean floor, 200 meters wide. The surrounding seabed showed signs of fused rock, melted by heat beyond any known geological source. The official report listed it as submarine wreck depression, but no wreck was ever found. That night, while the Calder drifted in calm waters, her crew reported hearing faint knocks reverberating through the hull. 3 of them. Bang! 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 In the morning, the captain ordered all sonar logs destroyed and the expedition redirected. When asked later by Naval Command why he aborted, he simply replied, "The ocean told us to leave."